Of course, Clovis Casali has been listening in to that conference as well. He joins me now live from the Élysée Presidential Palace. Clovis, a lot to unpack there. Let's start perhaps first on the international stage with that first question from the first journalist after that press conference on Ukraine. It is known that Lula does have close relationships with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Might this be some way for Macron to pass a message through Lula to get to Putin in regard to stopping the war in Ukraine?
Indeed, let's remind our viewers that President Lula of Brazil was in May in Russia to attend this massive military parade where Vladimir Putin was showing how Russia had defeated Nazism. And that did not go down well in many nations because it was seen as a way for Putin to show that he has got allies internationally. But for Lula, it wasn't the case. President Lula saying that he's been very clear since the start of the war in Ukraine that it was a Russian aggression, that territorial occupation of Ukraine by Russian forces was unacceptable, and at the same time that peace was needed, because Brazil says that peace is the number one objective, and to do so, President Lula has been speaking on the phone repeatedly to Vladimir Putin, telling him the aggression needs to end. But is that enough? Difficult to say, of course, for President Emmanuel Macron. The situation is very clear. You have one aggressor and one nation trying to defend itself, the aggressor being, of course, Russia. And President Macron in this press conference also stressing that the only nation that violated international law here was Russia. And so therefore two positions similar in the way that they both want peace, but very different in the assessment of the means to get to that, with possibly President Lula, one of the voices, one of the leaders who can still get messages across to Vladimir Putin if Vladimir Putin wants to listen. And for the time being, it's not really the case.
Clovis, there was also another very frank moment when the Brazilian president said to Macron, please open your heart to this agreement, the Mercosur agreement. Tell us a bit more about that and why this is such a sensitive issue between the two men.
Very sensitive issue between those two leaders who do appreciate each other on a personal level, but when it gets down to business, it's slightly different. The Mercosur deal is a free trade agreement in the making between the EU and South American nations. Some in the EU support it, but not France. Why? And President Macron has said it again in the press conference, because it's unfair to French farmers. There's a need for reciprocity. You can't import produce, you can't import things from South America that don't respect standards here in Europe, quality standards. And also French President Macron is saying, listen, we've been asking our farmers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to not use certain fertilizers and so on in order to protect the environment. So we can't import cheaper goods who don't respect the same rules here in Europe. President Lula of Brazil was very clear during the press conference saying, please, President Macron, open your heart. The Mercosur deal is necessary in order to rebuild multilateralism at risk currently with this world of where we see protectionism in the US, with Russia and in many parts of the world. The Mercosur deal is a weapon to combat that. And again, President Lula is defending the interests of Brazil and of the Mercosur. He will be holding the presidency, will be heading the Mercosur in the coming months, and he made it very clear when he's in charge of the Mercosur, he wants a deal to be reached. But President Macron saying again, we need to make some changes. There are parts of the agreement that are suitable, that are just, but not all of them. And therefore, there needs for reciprocity in terms of standards. And President Macron trying to put forward an argument saying, listen, President Lula, you want to combat climate change. You want to protect the environment. Therefore, you need to adopt the same standards in farming than here in France. And if you do, if standards are agreed upon, if there is reciprocity, well, of course we can sign the Mercosur, because France and Europe are not opposed to free trade. Free trade is, of course, a pillar of multilateralism and of peace.
Clovis, thank you for that. France 24's Clovis Casali there reporting from the Elysee Presidential Palace. Clovis will be checking back in with you throughout the day.